Happy American Education Week to all the dedicated educators who inspire, guide, and empower students every day. Your unwavering commitment and passion for education make a lasting impact on the lives of our students. Thank you for the incredible work that you do every day.
It is always a multitude of different professionals or experts contributing to the education world. All of the children that you could inspire and help along the way, you helped. And that's a good feeling to have.
You guys really help us in that you encourage us to be better learners and encourage us to get our education.
Giving help to kids who really need it. It can make a difference to them.
Happy American Education Week.
Happy American Education Week to all the teachers.
Thank you to all of our educators. This week, we're celebrating you during American Education Week. We appreciate all of our educators for everything you do every day for all of our families in Topeka Public Schools.
Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad to see a room full of people that we love in our district. So I am looking for an opportunity for the Pledge of Allegiance, and it looks like we have a special guest
We
that
do-
is smiling back there that might be really, really ready to help lead us. I'm looking at you.
And you know what? Nervous?
No.
No. Where you going? You better not nervous. All right. So who is your mom?
Oh, she's right there.
But tell the screen who your mother is.
Julie Watson.
Miss Julie Watson. Oh, Mr. Tatum, we'll get that. Dr. Gray and team will help us get that. Miss Julie Watson, and what's your name?
Orion.
And what school do you go to?
Chase.
All right, a Chase Middle School student. All right, so let's look this way, and I'm gonna have you come all the way back, kind of close to your mom, right here. That way they can see you. All right, so we're gonna put our hand over our heart. This hand over this heart. There you go. All right, you ready?
Mhm.
1, 2. Oh, you got the first. Okay, ready? All right, let's start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stands one nation under God, news.
Liberty and justice for all. That's the best pledge we have had all year. You were excellent.
Thank you for doing that. We appreciate you volunteering to help us out on that. So the next thing I have is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
I move the board adopt the agenda.
Do I have a second? Mr. Munoz? And a vote, please. Thank you. Okay, where's my mouse? Sorry. Got it. Thank you. Dr. Anderson, I am looking at what's on our agenda for the school highlights, and I am so excited about this. Can you lead us through the highlights,
Oh,
please?
absolutely. We're going to start off with our 20 under 40 honorees, and we have a video, I believe. Do we have a video? All right, we have a video from the event. So please enjoy the video, and then we'll be bringing our 2 honorees up to share a little bit about themselves as we congratulate them this evening. And I'm not sure we'll be able to show the whole video, but we'll be showing the first couple of minutes.
Anne is a leader who commits and reflects deeply, problem solves, and supports her learning community from a place of love for children, love for learning, and from her solid core values.
We have 2 honorees, so we have a second video as well. Then we're going to call both ladies up.
I have had the pleasure this year to get to know Eva in her counseling role at Ross Elementary. If you've ever met Eva, you would know that Eva just radiates happiness. Eva has a passion to serve everyone. If you ask Eva for anything, she seeks ways to find the resources to fill that request. She has never told anyone no, even though the request might be the hardest thing to fulfill. Eva sets herself apart from any leader because she is not about leading, but more about serving. This is why Eva, in my definition, is a servant leader.
Join me in applauding both of these servant leaders. Miss Anne D. Moranville and Miss Eva Yerkes, can you come on up, please? This is an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about both ladies. You may have seen both of them on social media quite a bit. One, because Miss D. Moranville leads our only dual language pre-K through 12 program. She leads the Scott portion of that. She's also on the superintendent's and deputy superintendent's advisory. And she really is a leader in the area of not only dual language, but really East Topeka. You may have seen Miss Yerkes on social media because she's involved in a little bit of everything in East Topeka in the community. In addition to counseling and mental health services, she volunteers, she works with Girls on the Run, she helps for East Topekan churches with cleaning up the community. She truly is a leader in her space at Ross Elementary. With that context, I'm going to turn it over to the board who may have a few questions for both of these ladies. And let me be the first to, they already have a really big plaque that they received at the event. But Miss Andy Miranda, congratulations. Thank you for all that you do as a leader. And Miss Yerkes, thank you for all that you do as a leader as well. We're going to turn it over to our board to ask some questions. Feel free to come on up.
It was such an exciting evening being there and watching you being honored. Do I have any questions from the board or comments that you might like to make to our excellent staff? Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies, congratulations. This is awesome. Definitely a privilege that puts you kind of in an elite category. So I hope that's something that you both treasure very much. I think Miss Yerkes, you in your clip, it mentioned servant leadership, and I immediately perked up on that. And being someone who teaches leadership development, servant leadership is something that I have. I consider myself a servant leader, but not a lot of other people do, and I don't think it's because they're against that principle, but they just haven't really thought about what it means to be a servant leader. So I'll ask this for both of you. What does being a servant leader mean to you, and how has that helped you in propelling yourselves forward in your careers?
Hi, good evening to the board and Dr. Anderson. Yeah, it means to me, I guess it's just serving with my whole heart and to everything and not expecting anything in return, and just helping as many people as I can through connections within the community and other resources. So that's what.
Sure. I mean, I think I would have to agree, and good evening to the board and also to Dr. Anderson. And I also want to just say thank you for this opportunity. I know I wouldn't be in the position that I am if it weren't for Topeka Public Schools, for Dr. Anderson and the other leaders like Dr. Mejia. And I mean, I could name everybody in this room, Mrs. Sharp, Mr. Robbins, Miss Billy Wallace, who was one of my Leadership Academy teachers. I mean, there are so many people that have just poured into me and helped me get to the position that I am. I'm just very grateful. But I think the people that model servant leadership to me the most are my parents. And I'd be remiss without, mentioning them, because one thing that has always been clear to me is to who much is given, much is expected. And they gave me the strong foundation that I have today. And so I'm very grateful for them. And I saw them pouring out their time, being there for me and just serving me. So now I can do that for others. So I think that in education, I don't think you'll find one teacher who isn't leading and serving. That's kind of part of the job.
Right. Thank you both.
Mr. Munoz.
Continuing on that theme, that there's so many people who poured into you all to sort of help to be where you are. What can we do to sort of be aware of others who we might want to highlight to sort of champion, them like we were doing to you? Any ideas of what we can do to sort of keep an eye out, and what should we be looking for?
Yeah, I think there's so many things. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I mean, we can both answer. I think there's so many things you can look for, but someone who just pours their heart into what they do. And I would just reach out to the schools and see who's making a difference every day and go from there. You can add to that.
Yeah, I would just say watch our district Facebook page. I think that our district does a fantastic job of highlighting the amazing things that are happening in our schools. And then also, I just think there's so many great things happening in Topeka right now. And you can see that through the magazine. I started reading through it and looking at the honorees, but beyond that, there is just so much movement and so many things happening. And I think just being aware, and then asking leaders to shout out people, which we're already doing too. So it's just being intentional.
Congratulations to you both. Today, I had the pleasure of being principal for a day with Miss Gorsuch de Marinville. I'm just going to use both names. Okay. And so I got to see your leadership in action today with such grace, knowledge, kindness. You knew like every kid's name and just how you presented the school and the students to not just myself, but our city manager too. So that was wonderful. And I don't know you yet, but I used to teach at Ross, and I know Ross is, yes, with Miss Boley. It's such a special school. So I'm sure you're incredible. And one day I hope to know you better. Certainly very deserving. So congratulations.
Thank you. You're welcome
Thank you.
anytime.
It's just so exciting. When I was at the dinner that night, I was looking through the past nominees and how many Topeka Public School people have been recognized in that organization. And it's just amazing of how well that all of you represent our district. So you got to meet many people, 20 under 40. What did you take away from your experience that you think is going to be important in your own personal life or your business life?
Can you go first? Sure. Okay. So I have an answer for this one. We were actually talking about this when we sat down is since receiving the award, I've gotten so many emails from different honorees or past honorees, and the connections are already being made. For example, the Bigs and Littles program reached out and they said right now, I'm just going to put in a plug, they have a need for 139 Bigs in our community. And so I'm like, I can do that. And so it's just, what knowledge is power. And I think that getting to know more people and more resources will help our schools, but also me personally. I want to continue and grow. And this has been one of the most humbling experiences, I think, of my professional career, just to see the amazing things that others are doing. And it's really inspiring me and making me want to do more as well.
Yes, I agree with what she said. I was so humbled to receive it. Out of all the people, we were the 20 and everyone was so amazing. And yeah, same thing. The connections I'm building, I'm just hoping I can pour them back into Ross and Topeka Public Schools in general. And we're already making that happen. So it's awesome. Yeah.
It was such an honor to meet your families and to see the pride in their faces. It was even more than Dr. Anderson. So, but we are so proud of you and we thank you so much for representing us in such an excellent way and for all the work that you do each day for each student. We appreciate you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That concludes that portion of the highlight. And when you get to superintendent's report in the next couple of minutes, we'll be highlighting all of our amazing principals. This is one of those nights where it's a good problem where you can't figure out whether to wear yellow or purple or what the color needs to be because they are all here being celebrated. So we'll be highlighting them at the start of that presentation and then going into the graduation report. I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Boley.
Thank you. I need to know if we have anybody for public comment tonight. Thank you. We need a disposition of business motion.
Right here. Okay, I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign the special project and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Tatum. And we need a vote. Oh, I should ask first, any comments on the business by consent that any board members may have at this time?
Yeah, I did have a question. It was about the concurrent enrollment program tuition. I noticed that some of the students were fully reimbursed or some had to pay half and then others didn't pay any. And I was curious how that's decided.
So there is a district scholarship form that students from all three comprehensive high schools can complete. And within that, they specify the amount that they are requesting in scholarship and how much they can contribute.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Munoz?
From memory, you're looking at that document, those were only from Topeka High, is that right? Or were they from all three high schools?
We support tuition of students at all three high schools.
Okay.
May we have the vote, please?
It's open.
Thank you.
All votes are in and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Well, we did get to superintendent report quickly.
We did. And so we're going to start off with our graduation highlights. Since we do have the highlights waiting as well for their photo, we're going to start off with calling up our principals. And then Dr. Kipp's going to go into the presentation momentarily. But if we could start with the celebratory piece first for those that have young children that may or may not stay for the whole presentation for graduation rates. We'd like to call up each of the principals, acknowledge the rates, which we've decided that the banners that you see will stay up the rest of the year. There's no reason to even take these down. Well, of course, Hope Street is quite special. As it fell down behind Mr. Tatum, it was begging to be right up front. In fact, I'm so glad that's the color that I chose this evening, was the color of the Hope Street robe. And then, of course, the scarf with everyone's color in it. So we're going to start off first with a congratulations for all of our principals. As we call them up, they'll be available to answer questions about their graduation rate as of this year. Then we're going to turn it over to Dr. Kipp to go into the presentation. But board members, after we celebrate the principals, if we could take the photo so that if someone does need to leave, and then we'll start that graduation rate presentation. So why don't we start with the banner that was begging to be called out first. So rolling with Hope Street, Mr. Dale No has now reached above 90%. First time in Hope Street's history. And Mr. Knoll, if you, and I guess the way the cameras are, Mr. Knoll, I'm going to step to the side. And if you can come up to the mic, I'm sure they're going to want to talk to you. And I will get out of the way.
Well, I'm Dr. Anderson. I am really glad that you said those were going to stay, because after they worked so hard to put it up, I don't know if I could actually take it down.
As we call the rest of our principals up, and then we probably will take one down to take the photo up front like we did last year. Since we're talking alternative school, what we'd like to give an applause as well to a very large leap for Cap City, Mrs. Oh my goodness. Real McCoy. I always call her Real McCoy instead of Miss McCoy. Miss McCoy, above 90% as well. And rather than looking at me, you can be looking at the principals, Mr. Williams. And Avondale West was 30%, now over 60% increase. That's a 30% plus increase with Dr. Grimes and Miss Luck and teams. That's our alternative school team.
Wow.
Before we move on to our comprehensive schools, would you like to ask questions of the alternative school team? And then we're going to call up our comprehensive schools, the next three schools, just to get everybody in this space, and we'll take our photo. Any questions for alternative school staff?
Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, this is specifically for Dr. Grimes. The leap with Avondale. You know, when we looked at graduation rates last year and this year, you know, Avondale plays a not insignificant part in that. But how do you, it's a challenging population. Like, how do you double the graduation rate in a year? I suspect it's a lot of hard work, but I'd like your insight on that.
So my role here is that I hired the most passionate, diligent, persistent staff, including Ms. Luck, who kind of oversees our virtual program. And we have one counselor who has more seniors than any other counselor in the district. I think we're at 157, higher than that. All right, as of today, we're even higher than that for this year. And it's a very difficult population, especially those virtual students who aren't in our building. We don't see them on a day-to-day basis, but it's constant reaching out, emailing, calling, home visits. We do it all any way we can. We open up a classroom to come in. We tutor on the weekends. We tutor at night. Anything we can do to push them over the edge. A lot of our seniors are working. They have full-time jobs, so they're not, it's non-traditional. And so we have to do non-traditional methods to be able to get them to finish. So, but it takes the team. Not one person could do all this. It takes everybody.
I don't have a necessarily question, just a congratulations to you all. It is an intensive amount of work. It's a team effort. We have high expectations. You all are, making progress towards that. And I think we celebrate every year. You celebrate every progress, and it's worth it. And so I'm just so thankful that you're with us. Thanks so much.
All right. And so as we prepare, excuse me, just a question for Ms. Lucht and Dr. Grimes. So your students, the building's open. So whenever they have questions, they could go there and somebody will be there to tutor them, right?
We're open Monday through Friday. We run a classroom, plus we Zoom with students who are at home. So yes, we try to be available as much as we can.
Yes. Yeah, and I saw how hard you worked for my former migrant girl. So
yes, she's one of ours. Yes. So she's one of that 68.
Yes. So my follow-up question was the age. So of your students who graduated, when we hear graduation, we usually think 18-year-olds. So if you could just talk to us some about the age range you see there at Avondale.
So the graduation rate is that 4-year cohort that we have to report to the state. But we also have non-traditional students. Oldest this year, 54.
One of our adult students came into the building today. Is a 41-year-old. We were looking at classes. So our adult students continue to come in.
We have a lot of parent, mother, daughters, sons and fathers. We have the gamut. And a lot of times they'll come in, they'll bring their student in, sign up for virtual. And they're like, I never finished. I'm like, come on, let's get you done too. So it's team effort.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Congratulations to everybody. Thank you.
I was just going to add, whatever you guys are doing, non-traditional or not, it is working. Keep it up.
Yes. Let's give them another applause. And this is a significant year. Mr. Knoll, when you started, what was the graduation rate, sir?
It was, yeah. And the graduation rate was a whole different beast back then. That was in the Stone Age, but calculated differently. And it was, it's become significantly more difficult with the way the state calculates graduation, who they count as dropouts and so forth. So we're super proud of what we've accomplished.
So he said from that 50% to over 90%, I think it's ever been at that space. So this is the first time in the history of Hope Street. So it truly is something to mark in terms of a historic and milestone year. We congratulate all of them. As we move on to our comprehensive schools, then we'll take that one big photo. We're going to start off with Highland Park, who has reached above 90%, and she has some special activities going on. Highland Park team, can you come on up? We have Miss Watson, Miss Giardina, and Mr. Schrader. In addition to Highland Park that has now, and I think this is the first time for Highland Park to have reached 90% in its history as well. So another milestone year. We're going to go ahead and call up Topeka West. I believe we have two of our administrators here from Topeka West, Mr. Buckendorf and Mrs. Nichols. And Topeka West has maintained 90% and above for multiple years, and to maintain that high percentage is quite the chore, and we congratulate them for that. As we continue on, and we're going to go to Topeka High, Mr. Dick, and I believe his assistant principal, yes, Ms. Riley is here with him as well. I think Topeka High made it to 90% about a year ago, maybe almost 2 years ago. At one point, they were in the high 70s, 60s and 70s. And so to also maintain, I think we've covered all of our comprehensive schools. And so I'm going to move out of the way and turn it over to our board to ask any questions of our comprehensive school teams who are now all above 90%.
I would just like to say what a blessing you are to our community, because we know when a child graduates, their life is extremely better than without that piece of paper. So I just really want to thank you for getting them to that goal line and making such a difference in our community. You guys, of course, you all know, you guys are my heroes. So we just thank you for what you're doing for our children and our parents and our community. Do I have any questions down along the board? Mr. Tatum?
I'm thinking about, I believe it was a conversation with Dr. Anderson that I had a while back, in which I asked her what the recipe was for success with our students. And she said it's a three-legged stool that depends on curriculum, pedagogy, and relationships. And I know for a number of you, really centering in on the relationships with the students is really what you're passionate about, and really that may be a big part of why all three of your schools are in the 90th percentile and above. But drilling down a little bit deeper, are there specific things, specific strategies, things that you feel has worked especially well for your school in producing a high level of graduates?
We have wraparound services, so pretty much there are at least 5 to 6 people that are focusing on each student, especially our ones that are at risk. We also have a program after school that focuses on the students who are failing and helping them by tutoring them and getting their grades up. So they attend Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 5, and we are relentless with that. So we really push and push and push to make sure that the parents have our students there after school so that we can give them that extra support.
I'll start to address that. Ms. Nichols?
She calls on me all the time. I think it's showing up for kids and knowing which kids need you. We try really hard to get some of those kids in our office every week, right? Just checking on them. Leverage that relationship a little bit. How can I get you to go to this class and cooperate with this teacher, get this assignment done? So, I mean, it's a lot of things, but I would say just consistency and showing up for kids and somehow knowing which ones need you.
Now, I have seen most all of you in action with some of students of mine. So when I have them, it's because in Topeka, it's because they're not enrolled in school. They're what we call out of school youth. So my goal is to get them graduated. So I've seen some of you, once they go to one of your schools, not give up on them, like whatever it takes. Like, oh no, I don't accept that. You're coming into my office. We're going to figure this out. You could come just in the morning. Oh, I know you have to work a lot. We are going to get you graduated. Yeah. And I have a student now, and I think he's going to end up with Mr. Knoll over at Hope Street. And when I told Mr. Knoll about him, like the next day, he said, all right, well, tell me all about him. We were going to FaceTime so he could meet the student. And he's on his way. He's on his way. But as teachers, I think we feel this way also. Like, I went to this boy's house, sat down with him and his parents, and I said, getting your high school diploma, this is one of the most important things you will ever do. And his parents, they're from Guatemala. They're from rural Guatemala. Spanish is not even their native language. So it's so important that some kids have educators to model this. So I sat in their living room and I said, I know his principal said, and me, this is so important to all of us. And then I took it even further. And I said, it's one of the most important things in my life right now. And it is. I said that he graduates in May. So Yeah, I'll be crying with you, Mr. Knoll, in May.
With that, if there are no other questions, we would love to take a photo with the board before we proceed with the graduation report. Is that okay, Madam President?
I think that'll work just perfect.
All right, we're gonna stop for just a moment. If we're gonna take the banner that was free, you can come on up front. Hope Street. Presentation on the graduation report. We again congratulate our principals. I believe our 20 under 40 folks who've had photos, they've had to leave. But their photos were taken in the hall and they were taken at the 20 under 40 event. All right, on this very first slide that's coming up now on the graduation rates, as a reminder, Dr. Kipp has put, as he's done in the past, on the very next slide, the comparison. So Dr. Kipp.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do want to point out that the special schools deserve a little extra shout out because the graduation rate that the state identifies and recognizes is only a 4-year rate. So they're addressing kids that may take 5 years, that are behind in credits, that aren't reflected in any of these numbers. So I just wanted to put that on the record that they're doing above and beyond is what presented here. Okay, so as you know, this is kind of a chart juxtaposed all of our schools with the national and Kansas averages. The national rate is kind of in the rears, but it's about 87% graduation rate. Kansas is at 89, and all 5 of our schools are rocking it above the 90% mark. So this graph is relatively new that we see that kind of discrepancy, but it's a great discrepancy. I do want to emphasize the formula again. You know, we're talking about graduation rates, but the state only recognizes those kids that finish in 4 years. If a kid goes to get a GED, that counts as a dropout. There's certain exit codes. I won't get into the mathematics and the formula, but it's quite a complex formula that started in about 2009, and all states are using this uniform technique. The district graduation rates, I went back 14 years, and actually I do have a little surprise for some of the board members that may have graduated slightly before that. I looked back at 2000, I had to go to the archives, but in the year 2000, for example, Topeka High had a 69% graduation rate. So that's just for context, how far we've come in 23 years. Highland Park, again, a wonderful trend line moving up, the highest that I could find in record history. Topeka High, again, been rocking the 90s for about the last 4 years. A slight dip, but overall a 29% increase from 2010. Same thing with Topeka West. They've been pretty stable up in the 80s, and then in the past 5-6 years up in the 90s. So an overall increase of 9%. And Hope Street probably has the highest incline of linear tracking. I don't know when Mr. Knoll came on board, but I think Hope Street opened in about 2007. Does that sound about right?
It's complicated, but it became a charter school in 2001.
Okay, got it. So going from a 38% graduation rate all the way up to this extraordinary 91.5. Yep. Cap City, you're going to see a lot of fluctuations because sometimes they may only graduate 10 kids. Some might have a class of 20, class of 8. So you're going to see a lot of that variability, but definitely a strong trend line of movement, and again, a historic record for this year. I always like to break down the demographics. Our demographics, the pink lines are the females, the blue lines are the males. Females traditionally out-graduate the boys. That is reflective of the national averages. We see that throughout the US. In about every other state in the union, there's that common discrepancy. However, this year, that gap is pretty tight. It's pretty narrow relative to previous years. And looking at subgroups, we always want to know how our free lunch kids are doing. These are not free and reduced. These are pure free graduates, the most economically disadvantaged students. And this year we have a record high of 86.9%. And special ed, we're about 82.2, a slight dip from last year. And I do want to point your attention to the ELL or EL graduates. This was a record for them to break that 90% mark. And I did include a slide to kind of break down some of the strategies that Ms. Curry had, some of the reasons for why that jump may have occurred. And, after we're done, if you have specific questions about some of the stuff the EL department is doing to support the graduates, we could certainly explore that. Again, 934 total graduates this year, as opposed to 859. Going back to 2000 again, we were graduating about 700. So not only are we graduating higher rates, we're graduating more kids, even though we're in an enrollment decline. So also, this was really interesting. This was the very first COVID-19 or pandemic graduating class. So 4 years ago was they were entering as freshmen in the 2020 school year. And I think to have an increase for that particular cohort of kids that started at such a challenging moment really speaks volumes to how these principals were able to move these kids and get them back engaged in, in-person learning, and just getting them back on track is just really impressive. Our historic district grade, again, 87.3. We haven't had that in over 15 years. And students in poverty, we covered that, ELL. And finally, the aforementioned schools that reached over 90%. And I did include some strategies that we've been initiating since Dr. Anderson's been here and sustaining. I won't go through all of them, but definitely some of these points, the principals mentioned relationships and context and connecting with kids. But these are some more, where the rubber meets the road, things that we've done, some strategies and tactics to really get kids engaged and on a path to that graduation. That's it.
So with that, Ms. Curry is here if you have EL questions, as we go back to that strategy slide and open this up for board members. If there are questions that you have. One of the strategies that Ms. Wallace and I both added on was the individual plan of study starting at middle school. I believe maybe Dr. Schumacher, maybe someone else that was talking about how to be exposed to college in the future beyond high school. So being really intentional about that particular area, as well as all of the other areas that are listed there, because that really hits every student. The only other item that we've added on, because you've seen this slide before, so you should have seen it before, because these strategies shouldn't change. we're going to be consistent and have the movement that we're having with the amount of significant growth that we're having. You would expect to see consistency in what we're doing. The only other item that we added on here that was some of the specifics, such as the community partnerships and mentoring. We added expansion for career success. So Lewis Toyota, that's a new partner, and some of our other partners are new. So we gave some of those examples. And then the Washburn Early Learning space, you know, that just started a year or two ago. So those are, other than that, everything else, mid-year graduation, college prep, CTE, data consults, all of those things were things that you've seen the last 7 consecutive years. Are there questions that you have? And if they're about EL, we'll be asking Ms. Curry to come forward as well.
I would like to start with a question. I do know across the nation that our males are graduating at less rate. Could you or somebody, all the experts out there, help me with understanding why we're losing the males to the graduation rate and what research there is to help get them to that finish line?
Dr. Kipp, do you want to address that, or would you like for me to call on a principal or Ms. Wallace?
I think, yeah, maybe a school principal might have more insight. I mean, I'd have to review the research on why that is, but definitely from a context of one of our high schools, maybe they could speak to that.
So in terms of experience, rather than citing the data, since we know we have another slide, it's not in this space, that nationally we mirror exactly what the nation shows, as has been the case the last 8 years for sure. But I'll turn it over to see if one of the principals, any one of the principals, in terms of why do our young men have a greater challenge than some of our young women from what you see. Is anyone burning to answer that question? Ms. Nichols?
Once again, Ms. Nichols.
Her background is counseling, and that's what we call good training. So Ms. Nichols.
My experience, I think this is probably a very general statement, but young boys and men are generally more kinesthetic learners. And so the game of school, so to say, to sit in the chair, learn the material, take a test, isn't necessarily what they love. We have had success getting young men to like Washburn Tech. That fits the bill for a lot of those kinesthetic guys. No, that's not every young man, right? I'm being very general, but in my experience, I'd say that's a little more of a challenge, finding something they're really passionate about. They don't always think about 5 years down the road. I don't know, women tend to be better planners. I'm just going to own that. So I think everyone brings their own unique challenges, but I'd say over my 10 years in the high school, that would be a generalized statement. A boy, do you want to answer?
Thank you.
I'll just add that we also struggle at times with a lot of young men who work. And so some of them find employment and find things to do, and in their mind and for their background and what they come from, what they're able to do to help their family and all that is important enough and meaningful enough to them that they can go on and contribute to their family and their lifestyle and be just fine finding a job and being able to do that. And so we do have some who find employment, and we struggle to connect them back to school and get them to complete things. Dr. Grimes deals with a lot of those students now that we have a virtual school, which helps us in that regard, because that's a bit more flexible than needing to be at school from 8 to 3 every day in order for us to graduate them. So that is helpful with that. In the past, we would struggle more than we are currently because of that. Anybody else?
So I don't know if you guys watch CBS News Sunday morning, but they actually had a story on last Sunday, which is about kind of what we're generally talking about here. And they kind of focused on the fact that being a man in today's society comes with a pressure to it that it hasn't otherwise come with, especially when you've got a lot of single parents, and so they need somebody else to help step up in that family unit of a single parent. I also, in that report, it did talk about, not too long ago in history, we were talking about females and the fact that they were lagging in coursework and graduation and going to college. And so there was a real big focus on the females and let's improve their success rates. And so we've kind of the pendulum has kind of swung too far that way, so to speak. And so I really thought that story was interesting. It was on CBS News Sunday morning, so I'm sure it's probably available online if anybody would want to go watch it.
We'll email it to you within our, on Friday.
That's kind of what I was thinking, that we put a lot of effort in bringing females up in their education, graduation and college, that maybe we need to take those steps in Topeka Public Schools, because, we don't have anything else to do, right? So, but, maybe make a little bit of a focus to see what we can do to support those young men to make sure they get their graduation paper. And I do think that our technical schools and our virtual schools are probably very helpful. That's kept us at the 87 that we have. So it could be a focus for us if we don't have anything else to do.
Something to note, we went from 75 to 81 to 83. And so as Dr. Kipp mentioned, what we're seeing is progress in the gap closing. We have more kids in CTE than we've had before. We're graduating more students at each of the schools. And as that continues, there'll always be continuous improvement. So we could be at 100% and the lines not be there, and we'll be still saying we can continually improve in some areas. So that narrowed gap, we anticipate that'll continue to narrow over time as we continue to expand opportunity. Are there other questions for anyone in this space on graduation rate? And we congratulate our principals once again on the historic rates. Thank you, Dr. Kipp, and everyone else. And
I did have one right here to my left.
So I would like to ask Ms. Curry.
Had a feeling.
Well, congratulations on such a high graduation rate
Thank
for the ELs. And I would just like for everyone to hear since you came to Topeka 501, like the changes that have been instituted under your leadership. And then also I'll make a comment about since Dr. Anderson joined us.
Where would I start? Well, we've done a lot since I started here in 2009. First and foremost, I've got to say the group of talent we have, and the gen ed teachers, of course, play a huge part in it as well. But the EL teachers are so talented. We have national board certified teachers. All but one of our teachers have their ESOL endorsement, which involves hours of master level classes and passing the praxis. We have one teacher who's currently working on his endorsement. So there's just a level there that's just above and beyond, and their passion for it and their love for these kids is just, you just can't measure how much that means. But I cannot say enough about project-based learning. This is such a good thing for our English learners. It's good for all kids, but especially good for English learners. And if you ever have an opportunity to stop in any of our middle and high school EL classes, they're all doing project-based learning. It's phenomenal, the engagement that's happening in the classrooms, the excitement. And all of our middle and high school teachers meet the summer before, and they plan their project-based units for the whole next year. And they work together. They talk about what's working, what's not working, what really got the kids excited. That's a big part. And also the collaboration that we have. We meet with our EL teachers, the elementaries, every single month, the second Friday of every month in person. And we have teacher-led professional development during that time. And our secondary teachers, when COVID started, up until just a couple of weeks ago, we had optional weekly meetings with our secondary teachers through Zoom, just to touch base and see how things are going. And now we've changed it to a, as needed basis. So we had that. The communication between the teachers and the schools, we've never been so cohesive. I've never in my life seen the amount of cohesiveness. The teachers are calling each other. They're depending on each other. The elementary teachers just started a social group where they bowl together. They have dinner together. So it's every year it's grown, and it's just been great to see. I want to also give the SAMIA grant a little bit of credit. We got that. We started September 1st of 2022. We got a $2.2 million grant. Cohort 1, all 10 of our teachers completed all their coursework, and every single one of them passed the praxis. And they're all getting it added to their license. Cohort 2 has 16 that are signed up. Already 6 have signed up to take their praxis. So that just adds so much more knowledge base into the classroom. And then, I've got to talk about our bilingual liaison, Mrs. Cortez, Samantha. She is amazing. She steps up and does whatever needs to be done. She's one person, but she'll go and she'll help in a classroom that doesn't have a EL bilingual para. She contacts families. She's there to help, and she is tenacious about absenteeism in high school. And she doesn't just call a family to let them know the kid's absent. She goes to that home, she does home visits, and she finds out why this is happening and what can we do to solve this problem. So I cannot even tell you about the value of having her on board. So I think Melanie especially, knows especially, I could talk about this. They say you should, whatever you do for a living, you should be able to talk about all night long, and I could. So I'll stop here, but I'm just really proud of our staff, and it's just grown every single year, and I think it's contributed to this. Nationwide, it's about 60% for English learners, and Kansas is 77%. So we are really proud of what our English learners are doing.
Well, I've seen it grow so much under your leadership, and the newcomer program at Jardine, that was under your leadership. That's, if anyone hasn't had a chance to go visit, you go visit the newcomer program. I mean, these are kids who come from another country. And so they need to learn like school in another country, not just, English as a second language and content, but how to school. And so that
it's a safe place for them to land. They come to Kansas, and it's a safe place for them to land. And that's the first and foremost, most important thing to help their learning.
Yeah, so I was really happy to see that. And then when Dr. Anderson, thank you, Ms. Curry, so much. And when Dr. Anderson came on as our superintendent, I know that you ensured that nearly all of our campuses offer EL services, whereas that wasn't the case before. And so I believe all of our campuses, except maybe 1 or 2 elementaries where there would be very few ELs anyway, but all of our campuses offer EL services, which is really, really important that we're doing that now. So thank you both.
Dr. Anderson, it seems like we're having so much success there. Maybe we have another Magna Award nomination here that we can show this data at a national level and actually honor our extremely talented leader here. Thank you.
That concludes our graduation report. We'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So we have been waiting, holding our breath about our climate survey results. And luckily our Dr. Wiesman has waited through our meeting and still here to help share her information with us that we have so far. We are so interested in this. So welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. And it's nice to see these awards and give purpose to why we're doing this. So we did this survey at the end of the first quarter. We gave a lot of thought into how to time this to have it at the right point in the year. And then the administrative team worked to allow staff to have time during their workday to complete the survey. So as you look at this is a little bit of process. First of all, we had 64% response rate, which is really, really good for a survey to all staff. And you can see now, I'll pretend I can see what those numbers are, but over 1,000 of our respondents did it during that dedicated work time. But the second biggest bump was we kept the survey open for 1 week. And on that last day, we sent out a reminder email that it was closing at midnight that night. And so I'm guessing in terms of looking at strategies going forward, that seemed to be an effective strategy because there was a bump of people who finished the survey or took the survey, started it on that day and finished it. The second chart is when they finished it. As you'll see when you go to the next slide, about 20 people, wink, wink, spent over 24 hours completing the survey. So yeah, I think opened up a survey and walked away from their computer. But the vast majority of people who completed the survey did it in less than 10 minutes. Then we had another about 28% that spent up to 20 minutes. But I have to tell you, this is very surprising to me that the times are as short as they are because, you know, we did a balance of pure quantitative questions and then open-ended questions. And we have 5,127 comments on our open-ended questions. Many of them, the comments are so detailed, they fill a full page single-spaced. Now, a whole bunch of them are just a few words, but there are many comments that are multi-paragraph or a paragraph long. People really invested and allowed their voice to be heard and seemed to be pretty reflective in the response. So it is surprising when we see how many we had that more people didn't spend longer taking the survey. We tried to set them up for success so that people could kind of plan and organize their time. This was a survey where they could go in and literally see what it is they were being asked to do. Now, they couldn't push submit until they hit all of the required questions, but the open-ended questions were all optional. So people could choose to just provide quantitative responses, but many, most at least had some commentary to further illustrate their responses. Okay. So we tried very carefully to limit the demographic questions, you know, high priority on maintaining confidentiality. So we asked a few demographics and we made those questions optional. The vast majority of people did choose to complete those questions. And so the first was job categories. So we did administrative and then licensed, involved teachers, counselors, social workers, anybody that requires a license, then classified staff. We had multiple categories for substitutes and then other that ended up being a larger category than I had anticipated. And I think there's a wide variety of people in that group, some of who seem to be being contracted by the district and are not actual 501 employees or some of the people within that group. And so the next one related to demographics was their length of time in 501. And then, as you can see, not a long time, and then education more generally. So that's a little more balanced across groups. And then we went into age. So, you know, not big surprises on any of these in terms of the demographics. And then were they elementary, high school, et cetera. So since so many people did respond to those, it gives us an option of disaggregating the data in multiple ways. Okay, so on this question, and what I'm doing is providing you with a broad overview from a 30,000 feet, so nothing is disaggregated here. These are responses from the entire group, and not every question, obviously. This is just to give you a little picture of what we have, and I'll be providing you more information than you'll ever want to read because we got a lot. But this question is, you know, do you have adequate decision-making authority? Keyword is to do your job effectively. And And I believe that says 57%. Thank you. Oh, 67%. I memorized some of these, but I can't see that. Okay, and then the next one, the key word is efficiently. So so if you think about a scenario, you might be able to do your job effectively with your decision-making authority, or if you have to get lots of approvals and jump through lots of hoops, maybe you can do it effectively, but it may be more of a challenge to do it efficiently. So that's kind of the difference there. And I'll just let you 66%, because also the camera's in the way of the numbers too. It isn't just that my eyes need to go. Anita and I have about the same age of eyes. So, that's okay. Please leave my excuse right there in front of it. Don't take that away from me. Would you, so the range on all of these is up to 100%. So we had a sliding Likert scale where you could do from 0% to 100%, any whole number in between. And so how many people will recommend 501 to a friend? 64%. So those are some good numbers. Now, this is to your own child. So this is always an interesting juxtaposition when we ask this question, and you would expect it to probably be a little lower usually. And what was it? 57 53. Okay. And then the next one. So this is where we get into a little more of the nitty gritty. So physically safe in your work setting. And I will tell you, this was higher than I had predicted, 75%. So in today's climate nationally, that number is often much lower. Then socially and emotionally safe, and that was 74%. And then do you have colleagues that are approachable, that you can talk to if you need help with assistance? Now, as we develop these questions, as you may recall, board members suggested, kind of topics they wanted questions asked, and then we tried to use a research base for this. And so as this question is being asked, we're getting at that research base that indicates people are going to be more highly engaged if they have connection in the workplace. And so 87%. So that was a really nice number. And then we move on to interaction with your supervisor. And once again, when we give you all of this data disaggregated with the qualitative stuff too, it'll illustrate it more, but tried to hit that peer piece and then the supervisor piece. And I believe it was just a little bit lower, wasn't it? 70%. So still pretty high. And then, as a measure of level of engagement in the workplaces, do you want to come to work? And it was 71. My memory seems to be about one number off on each of these. So, and then this I think is really powerful. And this talks about having, when we look at the research, having purpose, being mission driven, being highly engaged. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was high, 82%. So 82% of staff. Now realize that's not disaggregated. That's across all employee groups. So that's not just people who have a group of students to call their own. Those are evening custodians. Those are people who are working in the kitchen, that's across all employee groups. So I thought that was a very, very powerful number. Okay, and then supported by your supervisor, 78%, which is pretty high. And then, so this is personal needs and personal life. And so one of the caveats that I always present when we're talking about a survey like this, well, two of the caveats. One is it's always a snapshot in time. Okay. So it's that moment that people completed this, and that snapshot is obviously a week apart for some people. Okay. So whatever's just happened, what's going on. The other caveat is to think about that every person completing this survey sees their piece of the world, you know, the part that influences them. So these are their perceptions related to their part of their work in 501. And for some people, depending on the building you work in and the role you have, how you define needs and how you define respect may vary a little bit. Part of what you'll see when we disaggregate some of this by employee groups, and what is a little interesting sometimes too is by age categories, is how this is perceived. One of the funny things in quotation marks that I thought as I was reading through all the comments is right after I read a comment that said, this is a ridiculous question. Personal life is personal. It has no place at work. I had 3 of those like 1-page long single spaced responses. Obviously, it mattered a lot to those people because they had a lot to say. So once again, this person's piece of the world and their perception versus the next 3, just as I happen to be reading them, shows why we want to look at the whole, but we also want to look at it disaggregated. Okay, so that was 79%. So, and then the next one is that same kind of question in the supervisor role. And I'm not sure, Sue, were you at my session at the KSB convention? Okay, so this relates right to this. I did a session on employee well-being. And one of the things that I talked about was some work published by Adam Grant, in which he talks about the most damaging part of, and I'm using my words, not Adam Grant's words right now, of maintaining well-being in a workplace is when you have a situation with a supervisor where sometimes they're supportive and sometimes they're demeaning. And that is far more damaging to the employee and their sense of well-being than to have a supervisor who is just always demeaning. On the one hand, I mean, it fits with what we know about trauma. If you know what to expect, you're better able to handle it than when you never know what you're going to get. And so that's one of the reasons that this question can be so important in terms of, and why we say on most days, because we also know we're dealing with human beings, and I may be wonderful 9 days, and then on the 10th day I could just be impossible to be around. Don't ask anybody who knows me if that's true, but could be 77%. So, you know, when you think about in that context, once again, a pretty good number. And then how likely are you to use all your personal days this year? So this is kind of a moving target in terms of how we think about well-being. On the one hand, this is viewed as healthy balance, that if you have days that you use them as needed in terms of self-care. It's also sometimes viewed with concern if people are looking for ways to not be at work. So this is where I think the qualitative part of this in the comments will really help to illustrate what you want to glean from this information. And it was 58%. Okay, it also sends terror to the person in charge of finding substitute teachers every day. So looking at changing needs and your stress level, we certainly can see on a national level across all kinds of employment categories, higher levels of stress in the workplace. And so then as we look for where does the support come from and connection. So this question is that person with whom you work regularly responsive to your stress levels? And that was 69%. Okay. And so this is another one that's interesting. Do you believe the building principal is able to adequately support the mental health needs of staff? So depending on the picture of the world that particular people had as they filled out the survey, you know, there were a few comments of, well, this isn't their job, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, it's the perspective that you bring in, how you look at this. And it was 58. And so the reason that the question related to the building principal is more indicative here is that's that middle level leadership where you're sandwiched in between being directed by and limited by the leadership above you, but you're getting pushed to meet needs from the people that you're supposed to support. So the building principal can be a good indicator for that middle level. And okay, what was that number again? Okay, sorry. All right, so high needs of students, do you have, you know, what you need to do that? And what was that number?
This one is 55%.
Okay, so this is something that will be very interesting to you as we provide this qualitative part of this in terms of the comments and what that means to different people. We had, and it runs the gamut from food and clothing to social emotional needs, to time. You know, many factors played into this, including things like curriculum materials and instructional materials. And what was that number again?
That one was 55%.
Okay, yeah. And so student basic needs in the home. And the reason this question is asked is the well-being of our students really impacts our well-being, how they come to us. Many comments with lots of detail related to this and a lot of concern on the part of increasing levels of poverty and needs in the community. And it was 48%. So this is as an individual staff member, do you feel pressured to demonstrate student academic progress? And this number was lower than 56%. So it was a little lower than I anticipated. And then the next one, again, keyword here is effectively, and the 60 something, 63% felt that they had that. Okay, then notice here it's as a team. Do you feel like you have the resources that you need? So we're talking about, this is looking at achievement, looking at our lowest performing students. Do you feel like as part of a team that you have what you need to move kids forward, to see progress? And that was 51%. Now, some of those responses in the qualitative part referred back to those basic needs at home when they responded to that. So you see why it's so important to have quantitative and qualitative together, because the quantitative piece is just a small part of the story. And then here it's as an individual. And so kind of similar responses in the comments, and 48%. Okay. And once again, then this has to do with looking at being able to bring in new staff, hire people, retain people, this connection piece. It also relates to meeting the needs of your students. Are you able to reach out into the community and find not you as an individual, but as part of a system, able to find what you need? And that was 59%. So that, I mean, that's one I think you want to keep in mind as we look at the other information that's lower than we would hope that number would be. Okay. And then the parents piece. So take that from that broader community, and then it was lower, 56%. Now, if we think about the basic needs comments that we saw, it starts to make a little sense that they're concerned that the parents aren't connecting with educators when they're struggling to meet their students' basic needs at home. So kind of getting into taking care of the things we need to do. Okay, this is, big picture, is the district putting students first, fulfilling its mission, and 59%. So it's pretty good. And is quality data used in decision making? And this was a 61%. So that speaks well again. And this is like, so what do you really know about what's going on in the district? So the majority of staff, remember, this includes all employee categories. Okay. The most people feel like they know some of what the strategic plan goals are. And then this one is, do you know who serves on your board of education? And most people said they do. They didn't just say some. More people said they knew who was on the board. So that's good, because there are definitely districts I go into where that's one of the questions I ask in focus groups when we do superintendent searches. I ask kids if they know anybody that's on the board of education. Very often they don't. Okay. And so level of engagement in meetings. And so we did include watched now, since we've changed the way you can participate, but most people aren't actively engaging in the board meetings. So that's what we have for now to give you that broad overview. So we'll be adding the qualitative piece, disaggregating it across these employee groups. I've already got a great deal of that done, but some of it, if you've been involved with qualitative research, is you get into it to see what will emerge, and you can spend 20 hours engaging in something and end up saying, oh, well, this told me nothing. And then you move on to the next category. So one of the reasons we tend to like a lot of quantitative data is because you just do it and you're done. And so we'll be providing you information in the areas in which it does show some sort of meaningful information as we go forward. So wanted you to have that quick snapshot, be aware of the process, and I think really kind of celebrate that you had a pretty high level of engagement from a participation standpoint, not only in terms of response, but it appears that once people participated in completing the survey, they actively engaged at a high level in terms of filling it out. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions you have right now, but you will be hearing more from me, so you can always wait.
Dr. Schumacher.
I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Weisman. I know that you have invested a lot of time and effort into this, and I think even with this 30,000 feet view, there's high quality stuff will come out of it. So I appreciate. More just comment. I appreciate you.
Thank you. So you did remind me. So part of, as I give information back, I'll try to put things into categories of like what appears to be more actionable versus isn't that interesting. So we'll try to make sure that we make it as easy for you to use the information as possible. But thank you.
Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Dr. Weisman. This is I really appreciate looking at the results. One of the things that I was particularly concerned about was the level of engagement that we would get, considering the fact that the generally accepted rate of return for any survey is about 7%, and we got almost 2/3 of the entire district to participate. I think that is phenomenal. Just to be clear, there were several questions on the survey that were indicated as being optional. For those questions, a participant in the survey could skip answering those. But if you didn't indicate on your slideshow that it was an optional question, that meant they had to complete that question before they could submit at the very end of the survey. Okay.
So the optional questions were those demographic questions and any of the open-ended. So we didn't require people to do comments if they didn't wish to do that. So all of the questions that were a Likert scale that were not demographic had to be done in order for it to submit. It wouldn't be a completed survey if they didn't answer all of those.
And I think that's really the crux of my question, which is in order for a participant to say that they fully participated in the survey, they couldn't just, like some of the 24-hour people, just answer a few here and there and I'll get back to it and never do it. They had to actually complete all of the requirements of the survey before they could turn. So they couldn't skip questions that were not optional.
And I was able to see how many people started and did not complete. I didn't retain that number in my head. But there were some people that began but didn't answer all the required questions and weren't able to submit it as well. So more people actually started the survey than completed it.
Just with the sense of that off the top of your head, what I don't know, number, percentage, can you give us any sense of the folks? I imagine the number is probably pretty small. But I don't know.
I'm afraid to say because I might be remembering somebody else's work.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
but there definitely was a number large enough to take note of.
A number large enough to take note of. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lessons for the next time around, I'm sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Weisman. So our response rate, it looks like it was about triple. Is that right? Of when we do it internally? You said like it
So
was
I'm not sure if I
65%.
know what your internal response rate was, but by any measure, it was a really good response rate, which that's what I appreciate that the district gave dedicated time to do that, because that's what makes that difference. And then allowing me to send out the reminder, I think also helped because, we saw that big jump at the end. So I think those are things to remember going forward that seemed to make a difference.
Yes, thank you. So I think this high response rate, level of engagement was, I'm really glad that the board decided to go in this direction of using an external, using KASB to assist us. And I know later we'll be looking more closely at disaggregated data. So as a board, we can all decide how to where to focus our resources best, especially as we're coming to the end of ESSER funding. So thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. We're so glad that you were able to bring that information to us and get us started on our long road of work, correct? We're looking forward to being responsive to the people in our district and our leadership teams, and we just thank you. So our next item is going to be a course change at high school level.
So yes, good evening. So you have with you the course change proposals for the 24-25 school year. There are no added courses. Really, most of these are changes in description and or name of course, so that it is more identifiable or more accurate of what is being taught in the class. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any specific courses.
Do we have any questions along the board, or you need just a minute or so to see if you can form a question? Okay. We'll give you a few minutes to go through those.
And Ms. Wallace, once they look at those, what do you need them to do so you can guide them to the next step?
So yes, at the next step, at the next board meeting, we will be asking you to vote to approve these course changes.
So if you have questions between this meeting and the next meeting, that's a great time to give Ms. Wallace a reach out. If you have any questions, since there aren't any changes, it's just change in language.
And it might look like a little bit more depth in some of the classes that besides just changing the language and title? Or am I incorrect there? Or just the title sounds better?
A change in the title that is more descriptive of the course. For example, African American History 1 and African American History 2 are being changed to Early African American History and Modern African American History. We also wanted to ensure that students did not think that they had to take one before two. You could choose just to take African American Modern History.
And so it's better language for students and parents to be able to choose their courses.
Correct.
Any questions at this time? I do believe we probably had a bit of our work session from our survey. Are you comfortable with moving on from there, or is there any discussion you need to have at this time? Okay, so we have a couple of action items. Approval of the One United Voice platform, which is before you on your table. And that was presented to us at the last board meeting. And at our board meeting now, we need to approve that so our superintendents in the Shawnee County area are able to approach the legislators with concerns that we have for public education. Are there any comments? Or can we take a motion on a vote to approve?
I just have a question because
Yes.
this came up today during a principal for a day with our city manager. Just the discussion of why we don't consolidate. And I'm not suggesting we do. I'm thinking of like how Wichita is one USD. So what is the reason? I didn't have an answer. What is the reason why we have 5 different school districts? Does anyone know? In Shawnee
Well,
County?
just from my own point of view, I think it's community.
Hmm.
So all of those were individual communities before, they became closer to the city of Topeka.
Mhm.
And so there's just that tradition and history from alumni at Silver Lake that doesn't necessarily want to be considered as part of like the Topeka or Topeka being part of the Silver Lake.
Mhm.
So I think it's more tradition and alumni feeling
Mhm.
than, public opinion.
of bringing them all together.
Hmm.
Would you believe that may be true also, Dr. Anderson, or do you have any other opinion on that?
Well, that predates me, but I can tell you in general, when you look at urban planning and you see several unincorporated and unincorporated areas, much like St. Louis, you have some, and I'll use a small area, St. Louis County and Normandy school districts. They have 24 municipalities that feed into that, but it borders against Ferguson, which borders against Jennings. And so that division is historically for several reasons. One, tax base and the differences economically between communities. So there's some lining in that regard. The other historical piece is redlining is a piece in Topeka is certainly not exempt from that. Tennessee Town 100 years ago looks like Tennessee Town today. So there's some definite changes in communities, but at least in other areas, other large cities, the farther west you go is sometimes the least diverse and sometimes the higher end of some areas as it relates to tax base. So I know that Mr. Robbins has been there far longer than I have been. So that allows for example, certain areas to receive all of the funds on Wanamaker that we don't receive. Am I correct, Mr. Robbins, in terms of business taxes? That's a whole nother district. So when you look at the poverty rate, we're at 70% compared to someone who might be at 13 or 30%. So there are other reasons from an equity standpoint that there could be that adjustment. Again, not having the history in Topeka, I can talk about St. Louis and St. Louis County and the many school districts that make up that one county. It's significant. But a lot of that feeds into economic understanding from history. So that conversation of all incorporating, I think, is a dicey one, no matter where you're at, because there are many other pulls and tugs as to why it benefits some to stay divided.
Right, thanks.
See, her answer was much better than mine. Much more knowledgeable. But I also, my children graduated from the Rossville area. And I just know how alumni feel about those, how the community feels about that, they want their children to go to that school and their school buildings are extremely important in their communities. So
Yeah, it's a strong sense of just identity.
identity, yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on this One United Voice? Can we have a motion to vote for it?
I move to approve the One United Voice platform document as presented.
Do I have a second? Mr. Munoz? And a vote, please?
It's open. All votes are in and it carries unanimously.
Our next action item is going to be the non-resident enrollment policy that we have had in the last couple of meetings, some open hearings and an expectation from the state of Kansas legislative body to bring this to our district. And so we will need a motion to vote on this unless there's any other concerns or discussion on this after the last several hearings.
Madam President, I move to approve the non-resident enrollment policy as presented and heard in a public hearing on November 2nd, 2023, with no objections or comments from the public.
Do I have a second? Dr. Schumacher? Thank you.
All votes are in and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We are open for board member comments and we get to start with Dr. Schumacher tonight.
I don't know how to feel about this. We had a personnel committee. We talked about a few various things, but we're excited about some of the advances that we're making on staffing as we approach second semester. Some of the various ways that we're adding staff, but including some of the December graduates for those education students that are finishing their student teaching. I was principal for a day at Quincy Elementary with Mrs. Crow, and I've touched on it before, how we talk about, like, from a legislative standpoint, we talk about education in Kansas and how that's not a homogeneous thing. There's a lot of variation in what education looks like across our state, across our county. But even in 501, Quincy is a bit of an outlier, and I think what's powerful is having high quality staff and high quality administration in the building. And I think Mrs. Crow is able to take a different set of circumstances than may exist than like when she was at Whitson as an assistant principal, and be able to meet the needs of her students, which are can be quite different than the other schools. And so even though things are different from school to school and building to building, I think, like Ms. Nichols said, if we have staff that are meeting the students and that are consistent for the students, I think that's very powerful. And so it was a great morning and day for me. I will plug one thing. Tomorrow night, I will be at Nevermore, the theater production for Topeka High. I know a few of the kids participating in that. I'm excited. And then Saturday night, I will go to Topeka West theater production. So it'll be all the arts for a whole year. I'll be done after that, after the next 2 days. And that's all I have.
Mr. Tatum.
So I've got a few things to share to kind of update the board on. The first, we had Health Insurance Committee on Monday. And one of the main topics of conversation had to do with medication costs to employees, what those cost drivers are, how can we, look at reducing costs, premiums across the board, especially when there's a small handful of people that, because of their health needs and challenges, they're kind of skewing the information in one direction that's really kind of driving up the costs all across the board. And how do we do that? How do we make good decisions on the medications that we're subsidizing? And one of the things that goes into that kind of a consideration has to do with prevention. How do you get folks in a healthy lifestyle and mode of living so that their healthcare costs are lower, and as a group in aggregate, if everyone's engaging in healthful behaviors, it drives the cost down for all involved. So there's a wellness committee that's really kind of a subcommittee of the Health Insurance Committee, and I think I've touched on it before. And the Wellness Committee is continuing to look at some strategies that can work to keep employees healthy. The Smart Shopper wallet cards. We finalized, or the group has finalized, a physician engagement incentive that will help in that regard as well. And then at the end of the meeting, Mr. Minke introduced an idea that he's kind of looking into, maybe kind of more of a personal pet project for him. But there's an outdoor fitness court. The National Fitness Campaign kind of sponsors those. And basically they are outdoor workout areas that are free for the community members to participate in. And it's not like when you get a membership at a health club and you pay a monthly fee, you just show up. There's an app that you can utilize. I think you may scan a QR code when you get onto that particular fitness court that will kind of walk you through the exercises to do at that particular location. So it's possible to have a number of these locations. Not all of them have to be subsidized by USD 501. It would be great. And we kind of talked about the idea of building some community collaboration and having different outdoor fitness courts around the city, that, you show up to one and it's for one particular kind of a group of exercises, and you show up at another and that's geared toward something different. These are they're not cheap. It's $150,000 for an average court, but there is some degree of grant money available, 30 to 50,000. So it's just, this is kind of the preliminary kind of casting out feelers to kind of see what all is involved with something like this. It definitely could be beneficial for Topeka Public Schools employees and students, as well as general community members. So I imagine we will hear more on that as a little more research is done on the benefits, so we can kind of weigh out if this is really a direction to go in. So on Monday was a busy day for me. On Monday, I had the privilege of being invited to participate in an event called Real Men Read. And so I went to Mrs. Anderson's 4th grade class at Whitson, and those kids were phenomenal. We had a wonderful time together. We read a book. I don't even remember what the book was, but it was about a capybara that had like 4,000 friends, and he was trying to be friends with a sloth. And because the sloth is so slow, it was slow to respond to his attempts to engage it in friendship. And so he was frustrated and saddened, thinking that the sloth didn't want to be his friend. Well, it turns out the sloth did want to be his friend. It just took him so long to respond. And the kids picked up on that. They knew right away what was going on in the story. And so it had a happy ending. And so I just had a really wonderful opportunity to hang out with them. And I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Anderson and her students at Whitson Elementary. So for today, I also participated in Principal for a Day. I think we all did, all of us here anyway. And so I was over at Landon Middle School with Miss Cooney, and I had an opportunity to see students in action. I think one of the takeaways from Landon, and Mr. Williams was there with me too. I think one of my takeaways is that, and I was asked this by the students, all of the middle schools kind of have their own personality. They kind of have their own kind of cultural identity or dynamic. And for Landon, it's kind of low key, workhorses. They put their nose to the grindstone. They don't make a lot of waves. I've been in several middle schools in which people are like, yeah, they're making a lot of noise and they're excited. They were much more subdued at Landon Middle School, but they were studious. They were serious. They were thoughtful. We saw a number of students that were working on some really engaging projects and learning about history and just had a wonderful experience. And I think one of the highlights is that I got to meet with 4 of the student council members who there were 2 6th graders and 2 8th graders. They were all new to the role of being on student council this year, but they were all very thoughtful, very dedicated to the work of empowering their fellow students by serving on the council. And of course, I've got to also plug the fact that Landon Middle School is one of the stops along the way for our ELL students, those that traditionally start out at Scott. When they're done with that experience, they move on to Landon, and then from Landon to Topeka High. So got to see some of that happening too there at the classroom level while I was with those students as well. So yeah, just had a wonderful time. Definitely want to thank Ms. Cooney for being my guide to get to know Landon Middle School and the educators and the students that are there. Lastly, I want to say to my fellow board members, you guys gave me an early birthday card last meeting. I promised you that I wouldn't open it, and I haven't opened it yet, but thank you. I didn't get a chance to say thank you because I think I got it after the board meeting was over, but definitely thank all of you for the birthday wishes.
This weekend, I spent some time in Wichita at the Kansas Association of School Board conference. I encourage those of you who, if you hadn't had a chance to go there, every year in November, make an effort to be out there. I learned a lot. I was in the presentation by Dr. Weissman, so you saw how brilliant she is, and a lot of the thought that goes into getting the sort of data that helps us be better board members and a better district. And so she shared a lot of information about employee engagement. I also stepped into a couple of other presentations, learned about a project that USD 497 Lawrence Public Schools is doing, and a couple of other things. So I have some stuff at home, but I'll see if I can share that with you all. Let's see. I think it was Tuesday, which was Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. And so I hope that some of you all had a chance to participate in that. I was out of town, or else I would have had my boys walk to school. They were sort of relieved that they're off the hook because I wasn't there on Tuesday to actually have them walk. But I do want to see if I can at some point have them walk. I checked Google. They say it's a 15-minute walk from my house to Scott Dual Language show. And I think it's important. I mean, obviously, there's a reason why we remember Ruby Bridges and why her actions and sort of the bravery that comes along with that. We shouldn't forget about that. For me, as a young person, I always was cognizant and aware that I always had a right to school, but I was aware that others didn't. And so that was a very surface level, but it was inequity. Yeah, there were some students who had all the resources and had support, and some that don't. And so I think for me, as I talk with my kids in the car, we talked about, where we are now and what is still the work that needs to be done. So I think that's important for us. And they noticed some kids who are walking, and we talked about how sometimes kids' journey to school every day is pretty dangerous, and it involves lots of obstacles. So I was glad that day and participating in that sort of helps students sort of think about things differently maybe than they might probably think about. So that was Tuesday. Today I was at Shaner Early Learning Academy, and I was there with Principal Baxter. I learned a lot. I shared earlier today that they have Family Services Guidance Center. They have TARC, they have Parents as Teachers. So there's lots of different programs that are there to help our students. And we're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds. So these are really little kids. So it was funny when they come up to me and they'd shake my hand. And they just, it was a whole different world than it might be for a middle school or visiting a high school. So I enjoyed it a lot. What I took away from that conversation with her was that she was intent on trying to be intentional about meeting kids where they are, understanding that very early on is our chance to be able to catch kids and help them, so that when they go to kindergarten and they go to elementary, that any sort of need to help them regulate themselves so that they can learn that we've done that, anything that they need to do with parents so that they understand how important it is to come to school every day, even if sometimes it's difficult, that we can do that so that they can learn, right? If kids are missing school, they can't learn. And that when we ask ourselves, why do we have the numbers that we have in terms of level 1 through 4? That's part of it. So I came away very impressed with how much work Shana Early Learning Academy does. And the last thing, I was at Whitson, just like Mr. Tatum. I spoke to Miss Kim Burgart's 2nd grade class, and we read a book, and they had lots of questions about who I is and what's this job that I have of being on the board. But I enjoyed my time there and look forward to coming back some other time. That's my report.
All right. Well, you've heard me speak some already about my experience today at Scott Dual Language, and that was really fun because I hadn't been there. Well, I went 2 years ago when Dr. Mejia was still principal there, and that was fun. But before that, since my own children, who are both now in high school, so it was really interesting to see how well it really hasn't changed that much. I saw a lot of the same staff, which speaks very highly to the climate there, the culture there, like how they don't want to leave. They're happy there. And so that was fun. And I also really enjoyed getting to do this with our city manager, Mr. Neinstead, I think he told me I could call him Ricardo. So yes. So he was getting in the mood. He said, yes, call me Ricardo. So I'm going to call him Ricardo. And he was very impressed also. So it was great to get to talk to him, not only Miss Gorsuch de Marinville speaking with him, but also for him to hear from a parent whose both children attended, and then to Mr. Tatum's point, continued on to Landon and for native English speakers too, and then on to Topeka High. So probably the highlight though was talking to a native English speaking child in Spanish who was able to answer me in Spanish. So it was a good day. It was a really good day. And Dr. Schumacher, I also am going to Nevermore, but I'm going Saturday. Yeah, not to avoid you. Oh, what is that thumbs up? Okay, I already had it planned to go Saturday, and Friday I'm going to the Topeka West show. I think it's a doll's house. Yeah. I don't know, I might have to switch now just so I can sit behind you and like put popcorn in your hair. So I'm really looking forward to supporting our theater. And a little more survey talk, although I don't know who's listening, because Dr. Riesemann, that was kind of depressing to see how few people pay attention to our board meetings, but I'm saying it anyway. All right. There's this other survey that we've heard about, and it's the Kansas Teacher Retention Survey. And this is the partnership between ESU, KASB, KNEA, and U.S. Administrators of Kansas. And this survey closes November 22nd. But this is really important because one of our goals here, all of our goal, and Dr. Anderson's as well, is to recruit and retain as high quality staff as we possibly can. So the aim of this survey is to amplify the voice of educators and provide data-driven recommendations for the state and individual school districts to improve the educator experience. Okay, last I heard, Topeka 501 was at like 30% response rate, and that in order for us to access some of this data, we have to meet a certain threshold. I don't know if we've met that threshold yet. And I know the survey closes November 22nd. So I know my husband took it. He said it took him like 10 minutes. So I really hope, Dr. Anderson, if we could push this out again to remind our staff, it's just for certified staff, not classified, to please take this, because that will just be more data, another data point for us to help with decisions as we move forward. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
I would like to try to explain our finance committee that I attended. Mr. Minky's so good at this. I'll do my best to inform you. The education committees at the state building wanted a legislative post audit on education across Kansas to see if the money being spent by education is being wasted or if it helps our students. And they took the survey between 2017 and 2022. And the committee said this should give us a good look between post and pre-COVID. But as you, as board members in education, know that in 2022, we were not out of the COVID experience yet, but the legislatures do believe that. And the post-audit committee has determined that they cannot really express in their data if spending more money would improve education or not improve education. It just does not have the ability to predict that. And so out of all of that, that was the information. They, of course, gave them a lot more information, but basically said they cannot tell if more money would help or less money would help. And, you know, I'm just sitting here going, maybe they should look at Brownback education funding and funding now, if they could maybe decide if that would be helpful or not to have more money in education, but they only went back to 2017. Federal dollars to schools increased by 67% because of ESSER, and state aid increased 9%, but in the KSDE response to the local or legislative post audit report, Midwest CPI, which I can't remember what that's for, I'm sorry, increased more than 20%. Due to lower enrollment numbers, the district combined general fund and supplemental general state funds aid totals actually a decline, 0.25%. And so I hope that information is helpful. You have to sit in on these to get full information. And we also received our certification for our assessed valuation for 501. So it's progressing along and getting information. I also attended the ICC at Washburn University, and we were blessed to be spoken to by the president of Washburn University, and they talked about all the things that they are putting in place to be supportive, to create a system of pre-K through all the way through college. Instead of saying pre-K through 12, they are thinking further ahead and how they can assist our students even further, and all the supports they have on campus to help students as they come into Washburn. And we are just really blessed with her foresight and her drive to improve and keep our students here in the Kansas area to improve our communities. Also attended the conference, and I think since the district did help pay for this, Mr. Munoz, if we could write out some descriptions of our courses that are breakouts that we went to, and that information, anything we need to print off that we can hand to our other members. And another thing I would like to say at this conference, we also had legislators there that we were able to speak to. We had the school board members that were able to speak to on very personal levels, others, superintendents and board members from across the state. It is such a valuable conference that I'm hoping more of you will attend next year. And it can be a very powerful experience, a very good learning experience. I want to say, I'm sorry, I know we're going long here, but Pamela Johnson Betts, another person who is being highlighted from Topeka Public Schools at a city level. She is being awarded the woman who changed the heart of the city tonight. Of course, we weren't able to attend, but we just have so many quality people in Topeka Public Schools and in our organization, and we should just be so proud. Congratulations to the candidates that got their seats back. It's so good to see all of your faces here. I attended for Principal of the Day. I attended Highland Park Central Elementary. I got my Taylor Swift friendship bracelet. I'm feeling very cool. It says HPC on it. I walked in, and I'm going to make this really quick because there was so much to talk about, but I walked in and was greeted by the leader of Highland Park Central, Mrs. Abernathy. The staff was very encouraging about her leadership. We also had a Principal of the Day student, a kindergarten young lady who won the contest for selling the most at their fundraiser. And she guided us through the building, and her leadership skills are already growing. And oh man, she loved the walkie-talkie. And then I met with the student council, and their support people are helping those students become leaders. So there was so much leadership and encouraging leadership in the building. It was very impressive to see at that age and very exciting. And then we got on the Zoom and got to see leadership in our city. So it was a great day. And I appreciate all of you attending the school. And I appreciate the district organizing that and making it possible. If there are no other comments tonight, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? And raise your hand. Everybody is saying yes.
All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you.